Good day. Thank you for joining us for another edition of the program Evidence. We are receiving the chairperson of the National Commission for Human Rights and Freedoms, Dr. Chemuta Divine Banda. Thank you for joining us. Stay with us for the next 30 minutes. We shall be discussing more about the Anglophone crisis, and we shall equally talk about the creation of the Committee for Disarmament, Demobilization, as well as reintegration by the President of the Republic to resolve the Anglophone crisis. I am Dominic Memengwakimo. Stay with us. As mentioned earlier, we are receiving the national chairman of the chairman of the National Commission for Human Rights and Freedoms in Cameroon, Dr. Chemuta Divine Banda. Thank you for accepting our invitation, sir.
Thank you, Dominic, for inviting us.
I must say it's the first time you have been our guest on the program Evidence on Canal 2 English. We are glad to receive you. Doctor, let's start with this question. How do you describe the situation in the two English-speaking regions of Cameroon today? Is it a conflict, a civil war, or just a crisis?
I had the opportunity to describe that a few days ago during the presentation of our annual report, when I indicated that we have moved from a simple confrontation through conflict and through a crisis, and finally in a state of civil war. We found ourselves in a state of civil war.
Your description seems to be different from what the state of Cameroon is giving the situation there today.
What is the state of Cameroon saying, please?
The state of Cameroon have not fully accepted that we are in a civil war.
We are certainly in a civil war. You journalists can tell us better. That journalists have quoted repeatedly that on the 30th of November 2017, at the airport in Yaoundé, what the head of state expressed was taken by the Minister of Defense for a declaration of war. And what followed afterwards was really the start of a civil war, which has continued, and it has gained high dimensions, leading into real confrontations, military operations, as described by the governors of the Northwest and Southwest. If the governors describe on the field that you have military confrontations, I doubt what you call them if there's not a civil war.
Doctor, you are the chairperson of the National Commission for Human Rights and Freedoms in Cameroon. How do you describe the human rights situation in the two English-speaking regions of Cameroon today?
I think that before we really, I would like us to go, this an opportunity that you're giving to us. I would like us to see this problem. What has really put us in this mess? It has been a confrontation of the desire to freely express oneself, freedom of expression and freedom of demonstration, which are enshrined in various institutions of human rights, with the desire to maintain public order. And these three things, whether you're talking about freedom of expression or freedom of demonstration or public order, they were regulated by law in 1990. And the fact that we have exploded means that we've mismanaged the two things. We've mismanaged the freedoms, and we've also mismanaged the pursuit of public order. And that has really led to devastating circumstances on the ground. You're asking about the situation. The situation is that
the human rights situation there in these regions.
In these regions, I have described it in the past as a situation in which people are living in continuous fear because of insecurity resulting from the confrontations, not only between the defense and security forces and the armed groups, but a third component that is opportunist, where you have warlords and other opportunists who have come, who are taking advantage of the civil war to do to carry out undue damage to innocent civilians.
Doctor, when you talk about opportunists, who are you referring to here?
Opportunists. When you create a situation of violence and hostility and you get into warfare, I tell you, there are people who like it. There will be people who like it. Because in that state, people are living in constant fear. In that state, you will find people caught in the middle who have no inclination either towards what the Amber Boys are doing or what the Defense and Security Force are doing, because they both are using violence, which is not acceptable. The use of violence is not acceptable. And the state may argue that they have the legitimate use of violence. That the legitimate use of violence to us in national human rights institutions and in the human rights arena would only be justified in a situation that you are defending yourself against a foreign aggressor. And we saw the legitimate use of violence when we came together as 10 regions of Cameroon to fight against Boko Haram. You had young men and women from the northwest, young men and women from the southwest enrolling and going to fight to defend our national territory.
So what the state is doing today to fight against Ambazuna fighters is an illegitimate use of violence. Well, that's what you mean?
It's violence that we have to condemn because it is leading to serious losses. Human lives, property being destroyed, and again, our economy getting down to a very poor state. So that's why in the human rights arena, I say again, we never encourage the use of violence, not to talk of war. So it was an embarrassment for me as a chairperson of Category A National Human Rights Institution in a country, the country that has a Category A National Human Rights Institution. That means a country that has an institution that is must pursue the full respect of human rights. If we became unable to ensure the respect to life, which is the first human right, then it is regrettable to us. Lives have gone in their hundreds, if not in the thousands. So many have been killed. So many are in exile. So many are out as refugees, and very many are as internally displaced persons. Many are hiding in places for fear of security.
Doctor, you mentioned that several Cameroonians have been killed, but there have always been accusation and counter-accusation between the state of Cameroon and the Ambazuna fighters. Whenever a foreigner, most especially foreign missionaries, are killed, most especially we know recently the Catholic Church accused the military of killing a Kenya priest in the southwest region of the country. What is your investigation saying about these killings of foreigners?
Talking about investigation, I think we rely more on people present in the field. We take what the people present in the field are saying, because as I'm describing the situation of human rights in the northwest and the southwest regions, you must know that it is difficult to carry out activities, to live and work there. So even though the commission has branches in the northwest and in the southwest, it is difficult for these branches to operate. Because if you can imagine that even the Minister of Defense, when he sets his foot in that territory, when he's going, is heavily guarded. The National Commission on Human Rights and Freedoms, their workers are not protected. They are not guided. So the staff in those two regions find it really difficult to obtain correct information. But thank God that we are within an information age, that many things are exposed. You may regret that the use of social media is not revealing the truth, but the truth is that it is very difficult to hide the truth now. So when it happens, you find accusations and counter-accusations, and you find some steps towards investigation, but you hardly ever get the results of the investigations. And that's what is regrettable. And that's why we think that in the first place, we ought not to have gotten ourselves in this situation, a messy situation where you cannot even point a hand only on the Ambazonian fighters or the security and defense fighters, our security forces, but you have that third component which helps to create more problems. And there are accusations that some of those opportunists are doing even more harm, and they are doing more harm, and they may be set up, and they may be set up and supported by some people who want to create problems for us. That means that the third component of people destroying the Northwest and Southwest are their origin and the means that they are using. You cannot certainly say where these means are coming from.
Those people should not be ordinary people on the streets.
It's difficult to really identify them, because identification, when it comes to getting close to finding out the facts, identification and statistics will be very difficult. Because to identify, you should be able to get close and then carry out some diagnosis to be able to say something. Even when people are killed, you should be able to have some people, members of the family, coming out to indicate that they have lost members of the family. But we're in a situation where even when members of your family are killed, you are in fear. You don't want to talk about it.
Let's talk about human rights violation in these regions. Many people in the Northwest and the Southwest have mentioned that the military is using the present unpleasant situation to make a lot of money. They arrest people arbitrarily, detain them, and ask huge sum of money. Have you been getting news of that?
That's just what I was saying. It will be short-sighted to think that it is only the ministry, the security and defense forces which are doing that. We've also been informed that opportunists are doing that. That people who have just formed themselves into group to kidnap and to ask for ransom, and people who have armed themselves to be able to enter homes and collect goods, and that even some of the Amber Boys do get involved in this. But where will you place your hand on the truth? You will find accusations and counter accusations. Take the case of the more than 80 students arrested, kidnapped
from PSS.
From PSS. You as journalists have you been able to know exactly who kidnapped? Have you got the results of the finding? Where were they taken to? And when they were released, we'll be saying that they were released from where? That means you got them from some person. How were they released? Did they pay for ransom as we have paid for ransom before to have certain foreigners who are captured, who are kidnapped in this country? Or how were they? The truth is not coming out. You want to find out the truth? Try to find out the truth about the priest who was killed in Manfred. You'll be at a loss. You find the bishop saying that he was there on the field and saw what happened. There was rampant shooting. But you find also accusations that no, it was...
Bishop Andrew Kay was very specific, saying that the military shot the priest.
Voila. That he was very specific, but I don't know whether that has been accepted by public authorities. That's what happened.
But you don't expect the contrary. The public authority cannot accept that, even if it's the truth.
Oh, they cannot accept that it was the security and defense forces who shot. That's what they're saying.
That's what I'm asking you.
That is why I'm talking about a messy situation in which we have found ourselves, unable to place our hand on the truth, and just continuing in a cycle of destruction, killings, kidnappings. And when you want to find out who is doing this, you have in front of you different accusations and counter accusations. It's like saying, no. Look, the Amber boys will say, no, we are fighting to protect our people. We cannot be fighting to protect our people and then we are taking a lead in killing them. The security forces say, no, you people you opted to do this in order to bring the state to its knees and to accept you. And while they are doing that third component is rejoicing, looking for any opportunities to carry out further kidnappings and asking for money or looting. So they are, to our analysis at the Commission, there are three groups of people who are creating a continuous state of insecurity in the Northwest and in the Southwest. And so,
what's your reading on the Anglophone community in the diaspora?
The Anglophone community in the diaspora, they are certainly, from what we read from the media, contributing towards this escalation of the hostilities, because they strongly believe that there is no turning back. They are at the base of the recalcitrance, because many of those now in hidings and perpetrating acts listen to them. They communicate back home and they listen to them. And when
they listen to them more than the government.
Sure. And when we stand in the middle and try to advise that no, this is a wrong route. We did this almost successfully in the far north. In the far north, we went up and said the route by violence and by killings, destruction is the wrong route to achieve whatever aims you have. So Boko Haram, you better turn back. In the case of this crisis in Norway and Southwest, we have been saying the same thing. We succeeded in letting the people of the far north understand that the wrong route has been taken and that should not be supported. But we are telling the same, we are making the same effort to educate the people of the Northwest and the Southwest and to educate the general population that the route by violence is the wrong route. And if you've gone even very far in it and you realize that it is the wrong route, you must turn back. You must turn back.
Dr. Chemuta Divine Banda, in the midst of all this, His Eminence Christian Cardinal Tumi have opted to organize what we call the Anglophone General Conference. And for several months now, the government of this country has not given an authorization for that conference to hold for the process of peace to start. What's your take on that?
It is regrettable. And if you read on our website, the website of the National Commission on Human Rights and Freedoms, you will find what I've written. We wrote to the head of government, asking that government should encourage the holding of that conference and make sure that participants at that conference will be treated, will not fear for their life. That there was enough security to allow the conference to hold. We strongly hold that any attempt towards finding a solution by dialogue is better. But we saw that conference could have promoted a move towards dialogue, because we have witnessed that you have a lot of diversity amongst the population of the Northwest and Southwest. They are not saying the same thing. Some are opting for one thing, and some are thinking that we ought to have taken a different route. But if they are doing it in dispersed ranks, settled at distances apart, it will be more difficult. If you bring them together and the dialogue peacefully, they might be able to arrive at a common position.
Dr. Chemuta, at this particular stage, you just mentioned about dispersed ranks there, calls made by the Anglophone community. Will you recommend the holding of a referendum?
The holding of referendum? No, what you see, we are for dialogue. Whatever the outcome of the dialogue is, And that outcome is democratically taken.
But the government seems not have given chance to that.
Okay, it has to be democratically taken by those who have been permitted to participate. If the majority of those participating are proposing, it will be a proposal. You cannot impose. If they are proposing, then they'll propose that. And we would have expected, because you are touching there at a point which we have repeatedly regretted. If they express themselves, then the powers that be ought to take that into consideration and see whether it requires any type of action, political action, whether it requires a debate in parliament or it requires a referendum. They should take it back. A debate in parliament. I can tell you that many people will doubt whether a debate in parliament would produce the expected result because of the fact that parliament is for the moment dominated by one political party, a political party that seems to dance together.
Just to add to that, some people think the executive arm of government gives instruction to the parliament.
Well,
that is their take too.
We have had occasion to you are looking for the truth. I have sat at the National Assembly, invited. I sat there with diplomats, foreign diplomats, and the National Assembly conducted elections and elected the president of the National Assembly, and in front of us, the elected president stood up and thanked the head of state.
What do you read from that?
When we were stepping out, the diplomatic community said, no, you should at least be diplomatic, because he was elected by parliamentarians, but he stood up. The first thing was for him to thank the head of state.
Is that democracy in Cameroon?
Well, we hope that it needs improvement. Certainly needs improvement.
So, what would be your call to the Anglophone General Conference that is being delayed by the non-issuance of an authorization by the state?
I think when you are seeking for the right thing, you have to persist. Persist to seek for it, and hoping that it will be granted. I happen to be a Christian, and I know about persistent requesting. And I know about a lady in the Bible who was going to a ruler most of the time and asking for some treatment, and that person finally granted the wish of the lady just because the lady had been persisting. And of course, the Christian teaching that I know says that if you keep knocking, it will be open. But we have to regret a situation in which people could be frustrated. When you ask and ask and ask, and there is no response, you could become frustrated. However, let us be honest to ourselves. I think that the asking that has been going on in this case,
you have to persist.
Yeah, well, the asking has been, there has been response, but the response has not been perceived to be deep enough and to be broad enough to cover the issues that were being raised.
Thank you. If you are just tuning in, this is Evidence on Kanatu English. We are receiving the chairperson of the National Commission for Human Rights and the Freedoms in Cameroon, Dr. Chemuta Divine Banda. Doctor, let's talk about the newly created Committee of Disarmament, Demobilization and the Reintegration by the Head of State. The chairperson or the national coordinator of that committee is Fayengo Francis, former governor or an administrator in this country. What is your take on this particular commission? Is this the right time for such a commission to be created?
That is the question that has been asked repeatedly. But let me tell you from the very beginning, I was present during the inaugural speech of the head of state when he called on those who have taken arms to lay down their arms and requested that people should help him so that we can continue to build our nation in peace. I was present And I thought that that was a serious call from the head of state. That it came, I felt that it came from his heart. And I said, but okay, look at the head of state, who has been portrayed to be such a hard-hardened person. He is showing some humility. If he is begging that people should help him.
Do you think the call is being accompanied by concrete actions?
Okay, so you are not asking whether if afterwards he has created a disarmament committee, is that a good move towards that? My answer to that question is that that move is acceptable, provided that it is carried out in a spirit of reconciliation.
How will you intend that the commission should go about its activities? Where do they start? In a conflict situation where we find ourselves today, exchanging bullets on daily basis, the military versus Amber Boys, where do they start today?
I think that there have been a lot of suggestions in the past on how to deal with this problem. And you are dealing there with somebody who has been chosen as a result of the knowledge and experience that he has in trying to solve crises like those, like 5 Francis. The head of state has also moved ahead, maybe through the quick action of proposals from Francis. The head of state has been able to move ahead with setting in place structures that will brainstorm and come up with the best ways, seek to have the addition of the population, and then together they will try to look for ways of reaching out to those who are in hiding and who are armed, and reaching out as the governors have promised with a spirit of reconciliation, saying that no, look, it is not good for us to continue fighting. This was a wrong route that we took. We now want to end this route and then approach the matter by peace. Please lay down your arms, come out from the hidings, let's try to work together.
How do they come out when the military is still there with arms?
When I say approaching with a spirit of reconciliation and also having in mind the best way of ensuring public order, that the insurance of public order does not allow for violence. It does not allow for killing. So if you are trying to bring the people together, and the promise is coming from the highest authorities, that when you lay your arms down, you are not going to be harassed, you are not going to be tortured, you are not going to be maltreated. It will be really inhuman if you are fighting together, if you've taken up arms and you are engaged in a civil war, and by the time you want to end the civil war, and you call, of course, for the armed groups to lay down their arms, then you continue to use your own arms to kill them. That would be very unacceptable.
Will you expect President Paul Biya, since he declared war on the 30th of November last year, to make a call too, publicly, to call an end to that war?
He has made that first step. This is the first step he's making, by saying, please, let us stop the war. Lay down your arms. We will only help to reinsert you. That's what I'm getting, except you're getting something different. He's telling the people, lay down your arms and we will help to reinsert you in society. We will assist you.
Doctor, do you think there is enough guarantee for that?
You see, I cannot say. That's what we pray for. That's what we pray for. Look, I think that this thing is bitter. What has been happening so far is very bitter. And so you will look for ways and means of ending it. And when you end it, you should never, knowing that it was a bad route that was taken, you should not try to adopt that route again. They say once beaten, twice shy.
Every year you produce a report of the human rights situations in Cameroon. Do you have an idea that the government of this country have been listening to the recommendations you make each year as far as improving the human rights situation in Cameroon is concerned?
To be honest, I will tell you that when we produce our reports, we do make an analysis of the reaction of state authorities towards the recommendations that we have made. If you take a look at our report, you see that we take interest in trying to see how many of those recommendations have been taken. And we realize that they do implement some of the recommendations that we give them, and that they come back to us saying, look, some of the recommendations you are making require time, and we are working on making sure that they are implemented. I would not think that they totally despise the recommendations we are making. We have been following up, and the signals are that they do take the recommendations, implement those that they can, and this is even similar to what is happening with the periodic review, the universal periodic review. In the universal periodic review that takes place on human rights, that takes place in Geneva, very many countries come and they make recommendations. And then when the state comes back, it works on those recommendations, trying to see those that could be executed immediately, and then trying to program action on others. And of course, in a few cases, they say they would hesitate to implement.
In one of your reports, you mentioned there how it is quite difficult to visit detention centers in Cameroon. You have always been blocked by authorities concerned. How are you doing? What are you doing to overcome that?
It is regrettable. And what we do at our level is to let that information, let the public consume that information. We take that as a violation of the law, because if the law empowers us to visit detention places and some public authorities prevent us from visiting the detention places, then they know, of course, that they are violating the laws. And is
that a clear indication that there is a lot of maltreatment of persons under detention in Cameroon?
There's maltreatment. If you take the
perhaps especially those arrested in the crisis zone.
Well, but if generally, and also the 47 that you are referring to, which was at the base of our cry, the 47 were kept for long without contact with their families
and their lawyers.
And we decried that. And without any visit from a state institution that has been set up to be able to reach out to such people and see how they could intervene. So they were prevented. And that's it's not a good thing to talk about.
We are a few minutes to the end of the program. Perhaps the last question, just to find out from you, Dr. Chemuta, what do you think is that particular thing the government of this country is not doing to end the Anglophone crisis?
I think that if the government of this country would be willing to really get to the roots of recommendations that are given to them, when various bodies give recommendations to them, we do go away with the impression that they do not pay enough attention to the recommendations. So if they can really take at least this recommendation that we've been given repeatedly, coming from many sides, that we need to make a U-turn, a complete U-turn, and stop fighting, stop killing, because we're killing people who have committed no crimes. We're killing innocent citizens, very many innocent citizens, just because we got ourselves into this mess.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chemuta Divine Banda, for accepting our invitation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity given for us to exchange.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's where we come to the end of the program Evidence today, in which we receive the chairman of the National Commission for Human Rights and Freedoms in Cameroon, Dr. Chemuta Divine Banda. We discussed several issues, most especially focusing on the conflict that is taking place in the two English-speaking regions of the country, and most especially the disarmament committee that have been created by the President of the Republic. We thank you for watching. I am Dominic Memengwa Kimo. Stay tuned.